After more than 20 years of teaching writing and reading thousands of student essays, there is one pattern that appears so consistently that it's pretty much predictable at this point. I open an essay, I see a claim, I see a quote immediately after it, and then sometimes even another quote behind that one. And before I even finish the paragraph, I already know that I'm going to have to ask for analysis, explanation, and tell the student to go further. What makes this so frustrating for both instructors and students is that students are following instructions. They use evidence because we told them to use evidence. They insert quotes because we emphasize textual support. They're trying to sound academic, trying to meet the length requirement, trying to prove that they read carefully. And still, their paragraph lacks development. The reason this keeps happening has very little to do with effort and almost everything to do with instruction, because students are frequently told that quotes are required, but they're rarely shown how to choose them deliberately, how to introduce them with context, how much of them to use, and most importantly, what must happen after they appear. So the quote ends up sitting in the paragraph like proof that the reading was completed rather than functioning as material that the writer actively works with. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Dr. Whitney Costers, and I have been teaching rhetoric, writing, research, and literature for over 2 decades. And this channel is dedicated to making academic skills visible and usable for you. I do have a full library of lectures here on YouTube that walk through argument, critical thinking, literary analysis, research writing, report writing, and rhetorical strategy step by step. So if this kind of explicit modeling is helpful to you, be sure to subscribe. Now let's make the invisible steps visible when it comes to using quotes in an essay. First, we need to answer a question students are not always asked directly. Why do we quote at all? Well, we quote when the exact language matters, when a word choice carries connotation that paraphrasing would flatten, when tone shapes interpretation, when a phrase reveals irony, tension, contradiction, or pattern, and when precision itself is part of the evidence. If the specific phrasing isn't doing important work, then paraphrasing is often stronger because it demonstrates comprehension without leaning on the author's language. Now, that distinction immediately changes how students approach evidence because quoting becomes a deliberate decision rather than a habit. Second, we need to talk about how to find a quote because many students are told to add evidence before they're ever shown how to locate it intentionally. When you're reading analytically, you aren't scanning the page for something that sounds impressive. You are reading with a claim in mind, even if that claim is still forming. So you might be exploring what the text suggests about power, fear, loyalty, identity, authority, or control. And as you read, you're looking for language that helps you see how that idea is constructed. That might be a repeated word, a tonal shift, a contradiction between speech and action, a pattern of consequences, a moment of silence, or a detail that feels emphasized. So here's a practical move that you can model in class or apply yourself. Before selecting a quote, write your paragraph's claim in one sentence. Then return to the text and underline 2 or 3 places where the language directly supports that claim. Once you have those moments identified, ask which contain the most analyzable wording. Most likely you'll find it's not the longest passage, but the one with the most concentrated meaning. And here is the key intellectual shift. The moment you choose a quote, you are making an argument. Out of hundreds of possible lines, you selected this one, so that choice requires explanation, and your reader needs to understand why this line deserves attention. Now let's talk about integration because this is where students are most often underprepared. Imagine a draft that reads, "Mary is calm after the murder." All right, so I've killed him. Now there's a claim and a quote, but nothing in the paragraph explains why that sentence was chosen or what the reader should notice about it. The quote appears, but it isn't yet doing analytical work. To integrate a quote effectively, 4 elements need to appear in sequence: claim, context, quotation, and analysis. The claim states the idea being argued. The context situates the quote so the reader understands who's speaking and under what circumstances. The quote provides the evidence, and the analysis examines the language and explains how it supports the claim. So I'll model this clearly for you. In Roald Dahl's Lamb to the Slaughter, Mary's reaction immediately after the murder is marked by surprising composure. When she says, "All right, so I've killed him," the statement is delivered with a calm directness that feels more like acknowledgement than panic. At this point, the quote is introduced and anchored in context, but integration is incomplete without analysis. The phrasing is restrained, almost flat, and there's no visible emotional escalation, which shifts how the reader interprets the moment, because instead of chaos, we see control, and instead of shock, we see calculation. So the tonal choice supports the argument that her response is deliberate rather than impulsive. Now let's clarify something that students often misunderstand. Analysis is not repeating the quote in different words, nor is it adding a sentence that begins with "this shows that" and then restating the claim, nor is it summarizing what happened. Analysis answers the questions, what does this language do, and why does that matter for my argument? If you want a measurable guideline, here's one that works really well in classrooms. Your analysis should be at least twice as long as your quoted material. If one sentence is quoted, there should be at least 2 sentences explaining it. This ratio keeps your reasoning central, and it prevents the quote from dominating the paragraph. Teachers can make this expectation concrete by asking students to highlight quoted material in one color and commentary in another. When students visually see that their paragraph is mostly quotation with very little explanation, the imbalance becomes obvious. Now let's strengthen this even further by modeling a micro-revision. Suppose a student writes, "This shows that Mary is calm." That sentence feels analytical, but it doesn't move the thinking forward. Instead, we can expand it by asking, well, what about the wording creates that calm effect, and how does that calm affect interpretation? When the sentence becomes the flat, understated phrasing removes the emotional intensity that we expect in that moment, which makes her response feel controlled rather than impulsive, the analysis becomes specific and persuasive. So that explanation is the difference between labeling and explaining. Another frequent issue appears when students stack quotes, assuming that more evidence automatically strengthens the argument. But in reality, strength comes from explaining relationships. If more than one quote appears, the writer must articulate how they interact. So if early narration emphasizes Mary's careful performance of domestic labor, and then later investigators dismiss her as incapable of violence, the paragraph gains depth when it explains how those 2 moments connect. Mary's performance shapes expectations, and those expectations create a blind spot, which allows Mary control. The argument then emerges through the explanation of that relationship. Now this step, called synthesis, is rarely modeled explicitly. Students benefit enormously from hearing transitional language such as, "These 2 moments work together by showing," or "This later example complicates the earlier one by," because it gives students a structure for explaining relationships rather than just listing evidence. Before submitting a draft, students should always conduct a deliberate review in which they highlight the quoted material and the analysis, assess the balance, ask whether each quotation has been introduced clearly, examine for a specific feature of language, and connected directly to the claim. They should also ask whether any quote could be shortened and whether any explanation could be expanded. Now, if a paragraph feels short, the solution is rarely another quote. The solution is deeper reasoning. So ask, what implication hasn't been fully articulated? What consequence follows from the pattern being identified? What assumption is operating in the language? When students understand that quotes are chosen evidence that must be shaped rather than decorative proof that reading occurred, their writing changes. The authority shifts from the borrowed language to their own interpretation. And that shift is entirely teachable when the steps are modeled clearly. After 2 decades in the classroom, I can say that once students are shown how to choose, frame, and analyze quotes with intention, the margin comments really do begin to change. The quotes remain, but the thinking becomes visible, and that visibility is the real goal of academic writing. If you found this lecture helpful, be sure you're subscribed here on YouTube and following me on TikTok, because I've got hundreds of lectures to help you every step of the way, whether you're a teacher or a student. Remember, in English, skills build on one another, so the more you see the structure, the more confident and controlled your writing, reading, and analytical skills will become. I will see you guys in the next one. Be well.